not actually covered in the development agreements. They're typical for other types of development. And this is in our actual zoning bylaw, whereas development agreements are not. They're separate documents.
Councillor Connick, then Councillor Creasy.
So I'm just going to actually put forth the motion that Council can first read the bylaw 326(7).
Thank you very much. Discussion, Councillor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor. I was just curious in this bylaw 300 on number 1. Well, I'm certainly in favor of it. I was just curious for some clarification. I've got cash or letter of credit in the amount of 100% of the estimated cost of the required landscaping and 50% of the estimated cost for the required hard surfacing. Well, perhaps you could enlighten me, but I was not under the impression that hard surfacing was required in a lot of single site developments.
The current language in the bylaw speaks to landscaping and hard surfacing required. Landscaping and hard surfacing, but we only wish to change the landscaping to 100%. I can't think off the top of my head exactly what hard surfacing may or may not be required for such development. So it's not actually covered in the development agreements. They're typical for other types of development. And this is in our actual zoning bylaw, whereas development agreements are not. They're separate documents.
Councillor Connick, then Councillor Creasy.
So I'm just going to actually put forth the motion that Council can first read the bylaw 326(7).
Thank you very much. Discussion, Councillor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor. I was just curious in this bylaw 300 on number 1. Well, I'm certainly in favor of it. I was just curious for some clarification. I've got cash or letter of credit in the amount of 100% of the estimated cost of the required landscaping and 50% of the estimated cost for the required hard surfacing. Well, perhaps you could enlighten me, but I was not under the impression that hard surfacing was required in a lot of single site developments.
The current language in the bylaw speaks to landscaping and hard surfacing required. Landscaping and hard surfacing, but we only wish to change the landscaping to 100%. I can't think off the top of my head exactly what hard surfacing may or may not be required for such development.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Before you tonight is the final draft for Council's consideration for approval of the 10-year capital plan. The culmination of several months worth of work by both administration and by council. Certainly this is not a final document in terms of this will be a document that will be updated on an annual basis, and as such is nothing more than a planning document for future capital budget preparation. The approval of this document will allow us as well to proceed with identifying the priorities for 2013, which will be before you as part of the budget presentation later in November. Just a couple of updates from the last version. One, we've been able to update the trail system projects based on the latest information that was presented to the Rec Committee last week. As well, with council proceeding with the acquisition of some land, we've reduced the overall land acquisition budget in the 10-year plan net of that acquisition. So those are the major changes. There are some updates with regards to capital grants, with regards to population, but those numbers, for the most part, ended up being fairly minimal. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to go through at a high level the plan itself. So the 10-year plan outlines future priorities for the next 10 years. We have done some work beyond that 10 years, but this document itself presents only those obligations over the next 10 years. We've done our best to identify what funding sources in years to fund those acquisitions. As well, and an important part of that funding component is to identify what borrowing and reserve obligations the city would be obligated to under that plan. There are 15 key assumptions. I haven't outlined them all here, but they are in the report. But there are a number of specific assumptions I wanted to identify. This is based on, for the most part, 2012 costing. There's very little inflation built into this plan at this point. That's something that we'll be certainly working on a go-forward basis for our next year's update. And just to be clear, next year's update will be a 2014 to 2023. We'll add another year to each plan in subsequent years. Grant funding is based on existing programs that we currently have in place. Those are include grant agreements that we have signed with the province and federal government, as well as existing project-specific provincial grants, such as the municipal water wastewater program. We've assumed growth based on 2%, including we have updated populations based on current census for 2012. Water, wastewater, solid waste will remain self-funded utilities. In other words, any debt incurred for utility acquisitions, reserve requirements will be funded out of water rates, not taxes. Replacement of existing assets, including infrastructure, is based on the current overall condition rating. We certainly identify specific assets, but this is essentially to maintain the overall infrastructure as it is today. Anything above that is considered an upgrade or a new asset. In terms of assets, we're looking at just over $90 million over the next 10 years. By far the largest of those components are called engineered structures. Those are roads, water, wastewater pipes, lagoons, major traffic signals, traffic intersections, those types of assets. Our next set of assets would be buildings. I think the plan identifies 3 major buildings in particular: City Hall, Police Station, and the Public Works Facility. Makes up 34% of the overall expenditures. Next are our equipment and our vehicles. And then land improvements, which includes parking lots, trails, parks, playground equipment, those types of things. Annual expenditures vary over the next number of years. The blue is actual replacement, so those numbers remain relatively stable. Those assets, similar to previous years, have been a fairly constant, anywhere from 2 million to almost 3 million. The peaks, of course, are major capital upgrades. Those include major facilities, as well as 2022, for instance, is the Elizabeth Lake Drive. So those peaks have certainly would change depending on priorities changing over the next 10 years. Sources of funding, again, grants making up over half of the overall grant funding program, grant sources for this program. And those are in today's dollars as well. Certainly the number of those projects, and the biggest part of that would be the Municipal Sustainability Initiative, which is funded over the next 5 to 6 years. Our Federal Gas Tax Fund, which actually expires in 2014, although we do make the assumption that agreement will be extended, as well as what's called the Basic Municipal Transportation Grant, which is primarily earmarked towards transportation of road network. The other sources include reserves, which is assuming a $2.3 million contribution. We're currently short of that target, of course. And then debt making up about $20 million of that capacity. Third-party contributions we've added as an update. We do have some commitments from a developer in the southeast with regards to trail, and we're recognizing that commitment in this moment. In terms of debt limits, the borrowing projected over the next 10 years, we've gone back to 2008 to show the ongoing trend. Certainly debt, as we are adding debt, we are repaying debt. The largest, of course, is based on the Wolf Creek or Elizabeth Lake Drive project at the moment. And of course that is subject to change based on the scope and timing of that project. We are assuming debt limits from the plan right now. Doesn't change, of course. That's a fairly conservative estimate because debt limits are based on a percentage of revenue, and certain revenues are likely to expand over the next 10 years. And finally, debt servicing limits. This is the cost or percent limits in terms of the amount of principal and interest paid on an annual basis. For the most part, that number remains relatively stable. Should point out, though, that the borrowings in 2022 won't be reflected until 2023 from a debt servicing point of view. So this, although we do see a positive trend here, it's certainly going to uptick rather dramatically over the next in 2023. So, Mayor Christie, that's the summation, and certainly take any questions.
Thank you, Director Minchin. Questions, comments? Councillor Christie.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I wonder if somebody could help me understand on page, from the engineering structures network system upgrades, we've got 2.4 million for 34th Street for roads, surface and subsurface.
Sorry, what page are you on here?
Appendix A, page 9. We got 2.4 million there for 34th Street, and then the ones up above, the 1.2 and the 3.2 millions, and then the land acquisition. And so we're anticipating that to be an $8 million project then? Does that add up thereabouts? Okay. And refresh my memory, what year was it we were planning to do in City Hall? So that was in 18? So I'm just curious, what was the thought process when so if we're replacing it in 2018, we've got, for 3 years after that, then we're redoing what will this building be used for then? Because if we're replacing all of the furnaces and rooftop units for several $100,000 after we're out of this one, what are we anticipating that is going to happen to this structure?
At this moment, we assume that's still in the infrastructure, in our inventory at the moment.
It just appears odd to be refurbishing this one after we have the new one. That's all I was getting at. I'm just curious what the thought process was behind that.
The other issue, of course, is if the City Hall doesn't go forward, we've left this in, these are maintenance requirements for the facility. So it's, again, because this is a planning document, we are taking, we didn't want to lose some of the information with regards to some of these projects.
Another one that I hadn't noticed last time was $500-some thousand for tiling of the tanks, which I assume means the pool structure for those the swimming area. And I was just curious, that seems odd to me to consider tiling a facility of that age. I mean, that's the whole idea, that we've been stripping and repainting and trying to take care of it as we go along so that it would last. Why all of a sudden do we think it's necessary to retile that structure for $500,000?
Oh, I'm sorry. Director Vaughn.
To Councillor Creasy, I think that's a similar issue that Michael just spoke about with the current City Hall. In the event that Council does not decide to build a new sports facility or replace the pool, the $500,000 tiling would give it a longer period of life. So again, we've left it in the planning document, but certainly it'll have to be reevaluated as that year approaches, and we understand what our long-term vision is around facilities.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to be clear, a number of these items in the facility replacement are part of the life cycle costs for those facilities, based on the existing year for the age of that facility. So that's what facilities have identified in terms of what is likely to be needed in what year.
Thank you. CAO McQuarrie.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I just wanted to, excuse me, to add that this plan will be reviewed annually. So each year, the plan may be subject to change, and we may in fact delete or we may add maintenance to these various facilities depending upon. Certainly, right now, City Hall is scheduled to be replaced in 2018, but that may not occur. Therefore, it's in our best interest to leave the maintenance on this facility in the event that we need it to occur. So I think you just need to bear in mind that this plan is subject to change each year that we do review it.
Thank you. So then, some repairs and maintenance are in this only if they're major, the minor ones are left out, those are still part of the operations end of things, so. When, like, whether is there a cutoff point or just,
Yeah, this policy is prepared in accordance with tangible capital assets policy, so that sets thresholds in terms of dollar amounts and type of replacement. We actually have a major replacement list that we're developing as well that has to go through the operating budget, and that list is not part of this overall plan.
Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I guess it's more of a comment. The plan is a very broad stroke from a high view, and I guess what I really like about it is the fact that this is a public document as a planning piece, and it puts into perspective for anyone that wants to look and see if there is a particular upgrade or something needing to be done in a particular area. It at least identifies that it has been planned for that area at some point, notwithstanding that things may change, i.e. Woodland Drive, that one part that needs to be done right now. But I couldn't find in here no, I'll leave that point. I just wanted to identify the fact that it is a great document that is something that everyone can take a peek at. So thank you.
Thank you. Director Mitchell?
Just two other comments. One, certainly the way we do capital now since 2009 has changed rather dramatically. Simply spending a dollar amount by it in and of itself does not necessarily mean it's a capital item. For instance, the repairs that were approved tonight by council for the drainage work, landscaping up by Henners is an operating expense, even though it's a $57,000 item. It's not capital. And so the dollar amounts in the past used to be the major driver for capital versus operating expenditures. That is certainly one factor, but it's not a factor by itself. The other reason, the other important part of doing this plan, we have obligations or requirements under our grant agreements to have a multi-year capital plan. And right now, we're prevented from applying for grants for projects unless they're actually an identifiable plan. We do have one in place, but certainly it's certainly incomplete compared to this one. And so that's another important part of why we've prepared this document. The other thing with regards to updates on this, there are a whole lot, I think we identified, there are a whole number of other plans that council, committees and administration are currently developing. Everything from trail networks to MDPs to engineering studies, and those all ultimately feed into this plan. And so this is essentially a summary of all the other plans and projects and initiatives that council undertakes from a capital point of view.
Councillor Kite?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I certainly appreciate the work that has gone into it and into this and the changes that have been put into it as we have thought and come up with other things that needed to be included here. I would just like to thank the finance department for doing it the way that it is. It's very easy to read, it's easy to understand for anybody who looks at it, and I appreciate the fact that it is a fluid document and will be reviewed annually so that whoever is sitting in these chairs in 2 years or so will also have input into what our future looks like as far as our capital projects.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. So I move that council approve the 2013-2022 10-year capital plan as presented.
Thank you. A motion is on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? So carried. Thank you. I am going to bounce down to planning and development. Communications tower major, for a second there. Manager Loren, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mary Christie. What you have before you this evening is a staff report which asks council to support a submittal to build a new telecommunications tower in the same location as an existing tower, going from 40 feet in height to 70 feet in height. To give you a little bit of background, currently our regulations classify a tower measure as a discretionary use, and we require the application to go through to Municipal Planning Commission to get approved or denied. However, this is not in compliance with the federal regulations with Industry Canada, and thus we chose not to bring it forward to MPC because, in fact, Industry Canada is the regulatory authority which can make a decision as to approve or deny a tower application. And in working heavily with this in the town of Okotoks before I came here to the city of Lacombe, found that the best way to work with applicants for a tower, because the local municipality is not the regulatory authority to make a decision on it, is just to work with the applicant very closely and come up with a mutually agreeable solution that's beneficial to both parties. And we have done that in this case. We worked very closely with the applicant and found that tearing down the existing tower, which is actually not in compliance with Industry Canada, which is 40 feet in height, and replacing it with one that is 70 feet in height and will be in compliance with Industry Canada, and also will not have, in a planning department's opinion, a negative impact on the area because it is an industrial area and is already, as I said, an existing 40-foot high tower. We chose to bring forward this application, or request at least, to the City Council to support a letter, sending a letter of support to Industry Canada rather than going through the MPC process, because in fact we cannot actually approve or deny the application. And thus you have a staff report in front of you which shows, gives you an idea of what this tower will look like, given an example of a similar tower and a picture showing the existing tower. And because it will not, in our opinion, have negative impact on the neighborhood, staff is recommending that Industry Canada, for the applicant to use that in their application to Industry Canada. And with that said, I'd be available to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, Manager Loren. Any questions, discussion? Councillor Creasy, then Councillor Kite.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. First off, I'm not familiar with the term major. Is that what does that even mean?
A major would be an application for a tower in excess of 15 meters in height.
Okay. And what is this tower for? Just for telecommunications? Tell us or somebody, or what is it?
It's telecommunications. I don't recall the company is going to use it. It's basically replacing the existing tower that's for various telecommunications uses.
I guess my only question was, if this isn't something that's within our jurisdiction as Industry Canada, why are we worried about dealing with this at all?
Because the way Industry Canada has the regulations set up is they allow local municipalities, although they cannot approve it or deny it, the opportunity to write a letter of support or non-support, and then Industry Canada will consider the letter in their decision making.
So we don't have any power, but we'd like to hear from you anyway. That just seems very bizarre.
I guess that's
process.
Can be one way of describing it, but at least gives us an opportunity to, if we do not support the application, to let Industry Canada know. And the way it's set up, having done a lot of research in my previous position, Industry Canada has a long list of requirements the applicant must meet before they will approve the telecommunication tower, including a long list of requirements from Health Canada, another federal regulatory board they must meet before Industry Canada will approve it. So essentially it is under federal jurisdiction. However, they're giving the local municipality an opportunity to voice their opinion.
The way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a wireless internet communications tower.
I believe that is correct, yes.
Okay, so, and we're just approving a letter of support for them to make application.
That is correct.
That's correct. Thank you. Councillor Kite?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Just out of curiosity, I was wondering what is the minimum standard that the Industry Canada will support? 30 feet is a big difference from the current one to the
A minor application would be anything less than 15 meters in height, or a increase in height of less than 15 meters. So actually, this is not actually a major application because it's only an increase in height of less than 15 meters. But regardless, it would still be considered a discretionary use. So Industry Canada has different regulations. If you're bringing in a new tower above 15 meters in height, or increasing an existing tower by more than 15 meters in height, you're actually required to have a public consultation with the surrounding area, because this particular one is less than 15 meters in increase in height. That is not required. So all they have for us to do really is to review it with the proponent, try to come up with a mutually agreeable solution, and then bring it to council to send a letter of support or non-support. In this case, because staff believes will not have a detrimental impact on that neighborhood, being an industrial neighborhood and no residential neighborhood within 700 meters of this area, we're recommending that we send a letter of support to Industry Canada in this case.
Thank you. Councillor Craig?
I would then like to make a motion that we endorse the letter of support.
Thank you. Any further discussion, comments? Councillor Creasy?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. So I guess the one last thing, this is kind of in on the approach line for the airport. We're okay with heights there?
Yes, as far as I understand, it will not interfere with the airport.
Anything further? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. We will go back up to policy review repeals. Director Minchin.
Mayor Christie, this is part of our ongoing maintenance of our policy manual. Tonight we're dealing with departments 31 and 32, which is road and streets and common services. This department has an extensive list of policies that have accumulated over the years, as you can see. A lot of these are actually duplications of bylaws that are currently on the books or have either been repealed or have lapsed. Not quite sure what the rationale for putting a bylaw into a policy, since the bylaw supersedes the policy anyways, and we're going to identify. So there are a number of repeals related to that. There's also a number of policies such as common service rates, which have just lapsed and been replaced on an annual basis that will no longer in place as well. So we'll present this for council's consideration.
Thank you, Director Minchin. Discussion? Councillor Rempel.
I move that council approve the repealed policy registry for departments 31 and 32 as presented.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I was just curious, with a good number of these being bylaw items, the legalities of doing this policy repeal, we're still in order with that?
Yeah, tonight you're just repealing the policies themselves. The bylaws are unaffected.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. Infrastructure Services and Public Works Off-Site Levy Study. Director Gowdy.
Thank you, Mayor. Identified in the 2012 budget has been a off-site levy study. Off-site levies, just to give you a little bit of background, are how we pay for infrastructure that is required to meet the demands of incoming growth, incoming development, new development, instead of forcing existing residents to pay for that development. We attempt to recover that cost from developers as they do their development. So right now we charge 16,000 acres, is that right? Depending on the property, depending on the location. That was last updated in 2006 and is likely very low now compared to what we should be charging. So we've gone ahead and got a proposal for that work, and because it is more of a starting from scratch and looking at things with a fresh set of eyes than just updating the costs. It is about $5,000 more than we had initially budgeted for. So we propose to go ahead and do that work this year, hopefully finishing this year, but it may take into 2013, but we will be done prior to any new developments that this outside levy rate structure would affect.
Councillor Creasy?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Well, I can appreciate the need for this type of work to be being done. I wonder if you can give us an idea of how many acres of land we have developed over the past 5 years, say. I'm just having a hard time justifying the numbers. If we're going to spend, I don't know, pick a number, $100,000 or something on this study, do we develop enough land to, like, if this was done 6 years ago, and theoretically it should be done about every 5 years, thereabouts, I'm just wondering what the rationale is. I mean, so we're going to increase it, pick a number, $1,000 an acre, $5,000 an acre, whatever. Do we develop enough acres of land to even offset the $100,000 for the study? See what I'm getting at? I'm just trying to justify the dollars.
Excuse me. I certainly do get what you're getting at. That we would need to, if we increased it by 5,000, then we want to develop. There must be a certain amount of land developed to pay for the study. Regardless of the amount of land that's developed, this is a number that needs to be in place and accurate to cover this infrastructure cost. If this isn't in place and we do get a major development that comes in, say a Wolf Creek Crossing like we're working with right now, and they go ahead without us updating this, we would be severely deficient on infrastructure needed to serve that development. So I can't say what the next 5 years looks like, whether in the next 5 years we're going to have 20 acres of development or 0 acres of development. I'm hoping certainly that we would be closer to 20 or more, but this needs to be in place regardless of how much development goes ahead.
CEO McQuarrie?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. To Councillor Creasy, the philosophical, I guess, approach behind an offsite levy is that new development is paid for by new residents, and that it's not paid for by existing taxpayers. So an offsite levy has to be defensible in court, and it has been tested in the courts in terms of what can be charged within an offsite levy and what can't be. I do believe that it represents a fairness to the municipality that new development is paying for itself rather than existing taxpayers paying for that new development. And the other point I wanted to make is that an offsite levy is reviewed annually. So each year, any new proposed development will be considered in terms of that levy and what levy is being charged.
So we're going to start doing it annually then? Because it hasn't been in the past.
That's correct. Once we have redone the offsite levy,
Right.
then we will bring it before council annually for review and consideration.
Right. I don't know, I'm getting more confused the deeper I get in this, because like I said, if we're going to develop 20 acres of land, we're going to charge an extra $5,000 an acre on that land, over and above what we're doing now, just to pay for the study to break even. I mean, you might as well pick a number out of the sky and add it to that one. The process is just very odd to me. The numbers just don't add up, they just don't make sense. And I mean, if a huge development comes, if, ands, and buts, that's great. That would be a very wonderful problem to have. But unless a huge development does come, this is just money gone.
To Councillor Creasy, the intent of the offsite levy is to recoup the cost of new infrastructure. And if that's not being recouped through an offsite levy, it must be paid for by existing taxpayers. So that's the whole intent behind an offsite levy, that future development is paid for by development. And I believe that the $80,000 that's proposed here to pay for this levy will certainly pay for itself in terms of the changes that we will see to the offsite levy.
Well, thank you for that. I fully appreciate what the offsite levy is for, but it's gotta come from the same place that the money for this does, so, I hope you're right. I severely doubt it, but, if that's the way we're gonna go with it, then so be it.
Councillor Foster, then Councillor Kite.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. So I think, you know, what I'm having difficulty with is just understanding somewhat along the lines of what Councillor Creasy is going at, is that we have to justify this cost, but what I'm hearing is that this study is going to be, you know, $75,000 to get this one in particular put into place. That is our base. Next year, it might cost us $5,000 to do an update to make sure that we're on side. Because every year, or every time that we have a project come into place, we're using older information, but we'll have it within a year. So, and maybe to help put it into perspective for us, picking a number out of the air really is not the right way to go. But at the same time, the 80,000 or 75,000 has got to be put into the overall city. We can't put that into the next project, right? You know, so I guess, well, I'll just finish my thought process. So if I understood exactly what goes into that, like currently, how do we charge this offsite levy, and in the future, is it based on the cost of the land? Is it based on, you know, I guess, how do we structure that offsite levy?
CEO McQuarrie.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. To Councillor Foster, an offsite levy, Councillor Foster pays for arterial roadways, stormwater infrastructure, sanitary infrastructure, and water infrastructure. So as we grow, we need new reservoirs, for example. We need new underground pipes to transport sanitary sewer and water. And so with the offsite levy, a review is done to determine if there's any benefit to the existing community from any of that new infrastructure, and what percentage of the benefit it can be attributed to the new development, the new residents. So it's broken down in that way, and as I said earlier, it has to be defensible. So the breakdown has to be such that we can clearly demonstrate what benefit is to the new residents versus the existing municipality. Now, given my example of a reservoir, a new reservoir is only warranted when you have more new growth and more people who need water. So a new reservoir can be attributed completely to that new growth versus the existing municipality. So that's how the offsite levy is determined. It certainly requires a lot of work to look at infrastructure requirements, what's included in the offsite levy, and how the costs are allocated.
Thank you very much for that explanation. So just to keep it in real simple terms, if we're building a road and it's determined that 75% of that offsite levy is going to be to the new, 25% is put back into the other. So the cost of that road, just again so I can get an idea of what that offsite levy looks like at this point, because it's going to change, for a $1 million road, what's the offsite levy? So
the breakdown using your scenario, Councillor Foster, 75% being attributed to new development, so $750,000 would be incorporated into the offsite levy, $250,000 would be allocated or attributed to the existing municipality. That would not become part of that offsite levy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Kite.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I just wanted to clarify further to Councillor Creasy's question that the reason why we need to have the study done is in order for us to have those dollar amounts defensible in court.
To Councillor Kite, that's not the reason why we need a study, so that we can defend. Certainly if we were ever challenged and we introduced offsite levies that were not defensible, then that may become problematic. However, we are not putting an offsite levy in place so that it can be defensible in court, no.
So then we still haven't answered the question, why do we need to have the study to set that number amount?
To Councillor Kite, in terms of the study itself, it's very comprehensive, looking at all of the infrastructure that's required and then costing that infrastructure. So certainly there's a large engineering component to that. We have to involve our finance department to determine how we pay for that infrastructure and allocate those costs accordingly. So it's a very comprehensive review, and that's why we're proposing to contract the services of an external consultant to assist with that.
I guess the question as well, is our timing beneficial, I guess, with regards to the work that the province is doing on off-site levies right now too? And I know it's a little bit different, but is it beneficial to do it at this time while the province is working on it as well?
To Mayor Christie, certainly you make a good point that the province is reviewing off-site levies in this province and exactly what qualifies as an off-site levy. Certainly other municipalities have attempted to introduce recreation levies, fire services levies. At this time, those levies are not recognized and are not, they have to be paid voluntarily. We cannot go out and include those in an off-site levy by law. However, I do believe that it's going to take some time. If we're in fact going to see changes, the change has to occur within the MGA, and I don't believe that's going to happen immediately or anytime soon. And the other point is we will review our off-site levy bylaw annually, so we'll have the opportunity to make those changes in the future.
Thank you very much, because yes, the MGA review will be taking place, and it'll be approximately 5 years before any of that has changed, I believe. So to wait would definitely not be beneficial. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? And I do believe Director Gowdy is looking for recommendation from council. Councillor Bosma.
I would move that council direct administration to enter into a contract with Stantec Consulting Limited to develop an off-site levy framework for a fee of $80,686.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed? So carried. Thank you very much. Environmental Services, Woodland Drive sewer repair. Director Gowdy, you got a heavy night tonight.
It's actually just a pretty light night, and I have most of it. The Woodland Drive sewer repair is a request that we've made, basically to repair a developing safety concern on Woodland Drive. It's a safety concern in that large sinkholes have opened up, and it is a safety concern to some of our residents' properties probably. That is one of the most major sanitary sewers we have in the community, and it's certainly highly restricted flow right now and has the capacity to experience further restriction or even complete blockage. So unfortunately the pipe, normally we would repair this type of a pipe or this type of an issue ourselves using our own forces. This particular pipe unfortunately is, since it's such a major pipe, it's a 375 millimeter concrete pipe, which isn't a material or size that our crews have dealt with in the past, and it requires a machine to lift the joints of pipe. In our case, that would be our existing track hoe. It would be very difficult for us to do this because our track hoe actually has a limit of about 21 feet, and this pipe is about 18 feet deep in some spots, so nearly double what we are used to using or working in. So you'd be trying to work the pipe with the hoe to dig at the same time. It'd be very, very tough, so we'd probably end up renting a hoe. We also don't have the trench cages or certainly the protection for the guys to work at this depth. That can be rented, so we could rent that. And it's on a major arterial roadway, as you all know. Woodland Drive is one of our major arterial east-west roadways. With the risk factors that I've discussed, we have a concern of both the safety of the workers and that if things do go awry, as they tend to when you're attempting a job for the first time with a bunch of rented equipment, that's a major road to interrupt and could cause some serious traffic issues for residents if we run into issues. So we're requesting that council would authorize us to, on this specific job and not as a general rule or anything, bring in a contractor to complete this work, just because of those risks that I've discussed. Questions?
Thank you, Director Gowdy. Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Matt, certainly it makes sense as you put, and I fully support what you're suggesting. My only other question to this is, do we do some other scoping out down the line to see if there's some other pieces that need to be done? Because it sounds like this is a pretty old piece, I guess, and so if we just fix this one, does the line show? Because I don't know if we've done this scoping of or the line search, so that's all I was interested in.
Director Gowdy.
We have attempted to scope the line, actually. It's, even though it's a pipe this big, we can't get our camera this big through it, so we really, I can't tell you for sure, but because of some of the other activity we've seen around that line, we are recommending that we will go ahead and reline or replace that line as part of next year's capital work. We've had 3 sinkholes developed right along this line. It is an older line, as you identified, and then I think we ran a lot of heavy equipment down that road this year as part of development of the Northwest Rec area and some of those facilities out there. There was a lot of heavy truck traffic going over it, and I think that just expedited the failure of the pipe.
Thank you. Councillor Bausma, then Councillor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. This is a second item on our agenda this evening that has an approximate quote-unquote price due to partly with the companies that were asked to price it out not getting information quick enough to put into our assessment here this evening. How's this going to work when we have already a public price out there? And have you received any other commitments from anyone else to come forward to bid on this? It may seem unfair at this particular point.
As far as I'm aware of, this is the only approximate price this evening. The only reason that it's an approximate price is that we are going by hourly work. So depending on the amount of unsuitable material that we find once we open the hole, it could vary a couple of $1,000s because if the material's soaked, we need to replace it with suitable material. Now the number of quotes you're referring to, that we only got 1 quote on this, like the other piece as well. We have, for both projects, we went to the contractors that we know that are qualified to do this work, requested pricing. Because of the timelines, both the Henners work, council asked us to move ahead with that last meeting, so that was as fast as we could get quotes, and we did get the 2 quotes there. This one, we requested quotes from other contractors as well. I have received one that was substantially higher than this quote just today, but I wasn't able to get it into this package. And the other contractor has stated that the work isn't something that they're interested in doing this year because they're just too busy. It's really the time of year when you're trying to get last minute work done is very, very difficult. People either don't want to do it or they want to do it at a cost that's twice the going rate.
Councillor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I appreciate some of the reasons you went over for having an outside firm do this work as opposed to in-house, and that's fine for, I mean, certainly for the $22,000 we need to have it fixed. I was more curious with the comments you made about the replacement. Are you talking right from road through the whole subdivision? It's gonna be replaced, or where's the replacement expected? I guess because that's my understanding is this was put in about around 1980, so it's really not that old, this infrastructure. And what is it that went so wrong with it? I mean, it's not like it's just the last year because the trucks went over that this has failed, because there's been failures and cave-ins in the past. I mean, this is about the 5th one in a little over 2 years that has been repaired there. So obviously something's wrong. Either it's bad pipe or bad workmanship or something, just so that we can identify the cause of it and not get in the same situation.
It's sort of tough for me to say for sure what the cause is because we weren't able to camera it, but I would suspect that there is a problem with the joints itself. A lot of times the gasket seals that were put in the pipe around this time weren't installed properly, or they were a rubber that dries out and doesn't hold a seal properly. So I would guess that that's part of it. I'm thinking because of the restriction that we've had that there's probably also an actual blockage or a partial collapse somewhere. As far as the extent of the replacement, I can't say 100% because we want to do a little bit more investigation, but I think we're probably going to be recommending to go from Crana Lake Drive, which is not Crana Cove, it's right where the Lakes subdivision is, to the east to C&E Trail. It's probably the section that we think is damaged. Thank you.
Councillor Rempel?
I'd like to make a motion that council direct administration to enter into a contract with a qualified underground utility contractor for the repair of the sanitary sewer main near the intersection of Woodland Drive and Spruce Drive for $22,500 or less.
Thank you. Anything further? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. That's after the meat of the meeting. Bounce down to reports. Councillor Belsma.
The report is in front of you. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to read it. It is very exciting to know that our Phase 3 is well underway for the Heritage Survey Committee, and that we're looking forward to coming to council in the next year with a number of proposals in how to manage our historic sites and how to designate municipal historic sites. Coffee with Council, everybody has basically reported on that. The Rikabetsu delegation farewell supper, that was a very exciting evening to see the students from Japan that have come to Canada with their chaperones. It was a lot of fun. Considering where they've come from, the challenges that they have coming into a foreign country, not knowing the language I mean, and then seeming to really enjoy themselves, appreciating the gifts that were passed on to them, that was a very exciting thing. And then I also had a meeting in Black Falls regarding the Regional Emergency Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Belsma with regards to his report? Thank you. Councillor Creasy?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So, a fairly light report there at the Coffee Council. I did hear some positive comments on the north, regarding the north portion of Highway 2A, which was good because they weren't all positive on the south section, so that's nice to see. As Peter mentioned, The Reykjavik Friendship Society farewell dinner went over very well, and thanks to everybody who was able to attend there, from council and the mayor. Appreciate that. Rec board, I don't know if there's anything too remarkable there to go over. And last two entries I have there regarding the sustainability workshop, it was, I guess we have some regrouping to do and some rethinking to do there to come back with a little better approach. We did manage to take some steps to hopefully take the initiative to the public rather than expecting the public to come, because they made it very clear that that wasn't going to happen by the poor tenants that we had. So we are looking to regroup and see that through a later date. And that's all I have for this this report.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Creasy, with regards to his report? Seeing none, we'll move on to Councillor Kite.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. My report is also there. I would just like to also comment on the MSP meetings that we had, and look forward to administration's recommendations as to how we can reach the public. I think that we have oversubscribed to the public right now for trying to have the input in the various projects that we have undertaken, and it's very beneficial for us to look at other ways how we can reach them. And I recall a couple of months ago when we started this process that I specifically did say that we should go to the people instead of have people come to us, and that proved right. And so we're going to take a new approach. I very much appreciated Carolyn Bowen's presentation Friday night. She is from City of Calgary and was part of Imagine Calgary process and had some fantastic ideas that they used that worked well for Calgary, and they are still in the process of going through their Imagine Calgary. It was a long, many years of process, and so it was good to hear what worked and what didn't work, and what they are working on right now as we are starting our process. So it was, I found it very informative and helped me kind of get a picture of what it would look like, since we have not engaged in this before.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Kite with regards to her report? Thank you, Councillor Kite. Go ahead.
May I mention one thing coming up, since we have the Lacombe Municipal Ambulance Services final gala appreciation event this coming Thursday. Alberta Health Services is taking over the municipal ambulance service as of October 1st. And so we have an opportunity to acknowledge all the EMTs and staff of our ambulance service in form of a gala evening at Lacombe Golf and Country Club. And so they and their spouses are invited, and we are hoping to have a wonderful evening of remembering past times and appreciation for all that the staff has done over the years.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Well, I think probably from what Councillor Kite said, if we were invited, we had difficulty getting there because we're all gone. So, just the ambulance board. Okay, thank you. Okay, my report is there. Basically, I'd like to just touch on Lacombe Solid Waste. A long process, but this is the report that I'll be passing over to Matt. That is the business plan to change us from an authority to a commission. So it's very comprehensive and a long time in coming. What are the implications going forward? Significant, I hope, that what we're hearing is that we want to do an awful lot more with recycling and with waste, and so I'm certainly looking forward to the reports and the public hearings and that are happening with us as well, so that'll be certainly good to pass on to the authority. I'm an alternate for the community sustainability program, but it was important for me to participate in the sessions on Friday afternoon, Friday night, and Saturday, and we certainly did get a good education. We certainly, I think we were very honest. We got some great discussion with our group that was there. We just needed another 150 people from the public, so I think we're going to make that happen in different venues. So I look forward to that process. Other than that, just the upcoming things that are happening this week are going to be pretty exciting for the community, and I hope everyone comes out for them.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Foster? All right, Councillor Connick.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. My report is there. The only thing I'd really like to touch on is my FCSS board meeting on the 19th. Things are full swing there, of course, as many of these groups are in terms of budget and so forth. There was a request that had come forth from administration to set up a possible community fund to handle requests from such organizations as Big Brothers and Big Sisters for funds. There was they have a lot of questions regarding the fund, what it would look like, what are the parameters, and there are also some concerns as to what council's thoughts were. We haven't discussed this as a council, so I think that's important that we do that going forward before we ask FCSS to administrate this fund or look after this fund. So that's that was the only real thing of note from of concern from that meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Connick? All right, Councillor Kite.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Could I have an answer to that question about their question about the fund? What is their fund and how would it work?
Director Vaughn.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. In times past, the SCSS program accepted grant applications from other groups in the community doing FCSS eligible work. And FCSS eligible work is determined by the province. You'll recall that that particular grant is a provincial grant, and if municipalities sign on to have an FCSS program in their community, the provincial funding is 80%, and the municipal government contributes 20%. And the total grant amount is a formula that is established by the province, and it is based on per capita. It takes into consideration average incomes per capita and your location in the province. So in times past, FCSS has been able to provide grants to external agencies who are practicing work that were within the confines of that eligibility. But that grant has not increased in a number of years. It hasn't increased on the provincial side. City of Lacombe Council has provided some additional funds, and so the FCSS board, I believe it was 2 to 3 years ago, stopped accepting grant applications, and they're using the total grant available to fund the programs internal to the FCSS program. Some of the issues are that the grant has been stagnant for a number of years, and so wages were stagnating, and it was difficult to retain staff because the wages still remain fairly low for the positions within that organization. So council will recall that last year Big Brothers Big Sisters approached council directly requesting funding for their particular program. That program is a program that is eligible under the FCSS granting guidelines. It's the opinion of administration that all grant applications for FCSS eligible work should be going through the FCSS program. That program has the professional capacity and ability to accept applications, adjudicate them, and ensure appropriate allocation of funds and deal with the accountability end. So in speaking with Susan, the executive director, we asked, she and I discussed it, and obviously it needed to go to the FCSS board, and so it did, that request went to them, and we're now hearing that they have a few more questions, and certainly I'll be following up with Susan. It would be expected that if the FCSS board were to agree to that, when they come to present their budget to council for 2013, they will be requesting the funds to support that fund. And I have spoken with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and they are aware of this, and they will be working alongside FCSS depending on the outcome of the board's and council's decisions.
Councillor Kate?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Thank you, Deborah Devon, for that. What are all the groups that will fall under that criteria who can apply for grants through FCSS that currently do not?
I don't know that I could give you an itinerary of that, but FCSS is for social programming.
Right.
That is preventative in nature, and it's fairly tightly managed. I can tell you that in years past, FCSS dollars from this particular agency were given to victim services to train the volunteer advocates, because volunteerism is one of the key components of that. But not all agencies within the community, like service clubs, those kinds of things, would not have a natural affinity with that grant program. It's social programming, social planning, and prevention.
Thank you. Any further questions with regards to Councillor Connick, his report? Councillor Ripple.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I think y'all received my my report, so I'll just do a couple of highlights for the Chamber of Commerce. The awards gala will be coming up on October the 20th, I believe is the date. 20th? Yeah. And so things are in the whole mode of getting everything organized and done. There'll be a corporate challenge again, and all that information should be coming out shortly. Other than that, I guess it wasn't attached to the agenda, but it is in your email, and I'll get it attached to the agenda as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Ripple? No? My report's there before you as well. Fairly straightforward, and I know it's a busy time of year right now for everybody, and I just want to thank staff and council for their attendance at a lot of this stuff at Coffee with Council at our